Alright, cool. Where were we? Alright, Oishi, he came by to inquire about Satoko, who didn't come to school. And everyone was saying that, well, there's all these rumors going around. We found out from Coach Irie that Oishi, it seems like whenever something bad happens, he's around. So they say he's like the servant of Oyashiro-sama. And then just the Hojo, that whole family keeps getting wrecked. So it's pretty tragic for Satoko here. We don't know what happened to her. Coach Irie was cool until he wasn't. Coach Irie. And then in the tips we learned that it was one of Teppei's girls that got killed in the beginning, probably by the Sonozakis. And what else? That other thing we learned. It's not coming back to me, but that's where we are. So let's see. Let's continue. Maybe we'll find out what happened to Sadako now.
守りたいと思う心に嘘はなかった。大切にしたいと思う心は誰よりも強いはずだった。優しさから生まれた感情はやがて殺意へと変わり、真っ白だった思いは赤と黒で染まってゆく。それが守りたかった日常の崩壊を意味していると分かっていながら。たたり殺し。何が間違っていたのか。その答えを探して、悲劇はさらに広がってゆく。
Things are not looking good.
北条さんは今日もお休みですか？
Fuck.
古出さんは何か知っていますか？
The teacher's voice wasn't critical, but Rika hung her head, unable to answer, and I felt really bad for her. The teacher called Rika up, and they had an exchange in hushed tones at the dais. Dais? At first, Rika said that Satoko's fever had grown worse, but everyone in class knew it was a lie. Because every day Rika brought Satoko's bento with her.
さとこちゃん、どうしちゃったんだろうね。
俺が知るかよ。
I'm the one who wants to know most of all. It was already the third day since Satoko's first absence. Ever since then, I haven't felt good. Until just last Sunday, everything had been so much fun. I had reached out to Satoko like a real older brother, and we spent that time quietly, but warm and comfortable. So why had it suddenly been flipped over? The more I thought about it, the more I thought that the world had taken a turn for the worse ever since Oishi arrived. Thinking on it now, maybe the strained apprehension plaguing me the night before Oishi arrived had been a sign. Kurandao Oishi, Oyashiro-sama's servant.
くそ、そんなことあるもんか。あいつが現れたから、サトコが今年のタタリに会う役だなんて決められてたまるかよ。
Just where to slip up had I committed to cause those fun times to end so suddenly. And also we know Oishi's, I don't think he's the cause of anything. He's just a really good detective. He's just kind of a prick sometimes. Yes, it was the day before Oishi appeared, but maybe, I mean, he's frustrated too. That's why he's like getting all violent and stuff. Shion, Mion, and Rena had spoken of the curse surrounding Satoshi and his disappearance, and it was so sinister it gave me a bad premonition. Such a small thing was the slip-up that invited Oyashiro-sama's servant. It was absurd. I kept on groaning to myself that I would never accept it, ever. I obviously wasn't the only one expressing my feelings. Mion and Rena were too. Everyone in class was doing it. Rika knew something about Satoko's situation, but she wouldn't tell us. Rika still held a calm attitude like a cat basking in the sun. But she was being unbelievable stubborn about this whole thing. She didn't want to tell us, and that wouldn't change no matter how many times we asked her. Everyone understood that, so nobody questioned her.
リカちゃんが言わないならさ、言うまで待つしかないよね。 逆に言わないってことは、言う必要もない程度のことかもしれないし。
I don't know. There was no persuasive power in reassurance given with an anxious face like that. Mion was being taciturn and just looked up at the sky with a somehow annoyed expression. I couldn't tell if she was unhappy that Rika wouldn't talk about it with her own friends. Or if she was concerned over Satoko's well-being. And what about me? My anxiety was suffocating me day after day. If someone else were looking at me, then maybe I'd look annoyed, like Mion did. Tap tap. Someone tapped my shoulder. It was Tomita and Okamura.
前原さん、ちょっといいですか？
またボールが引っかかったか？今度はお前たちで何とかしてみろよ。
The trouble that was caused because I went to go get it.
いつまでも先輩に頼るのは良くないぜ。
I didn't feel like going along with them, so I was a little unsympathetic with my response.
ちょっと気になる噂を聞いたんすよ。
Stop it.
噂？
はい。ひょっとすると、関係があるかもと思って。
A rumor, huh? About Satoko. They hadn't said that, but it didn't seem unrelated. They didn't want to talk in the classroom, so they pulled me behind the school building, lending further credence to that thought. The back of the school was damp and humid, like always. Students didn't really come here because they wanted to. It might, however, have been the ideal location for trading rumors away from prying eyes.
富田くん、岡村くん、その噂話って、もちろん里子の欠席と関係のある話なんだろうな。
関係があるかはわからないですけど、あるいは。
里子は一体どうしたってんだ？風邪なのか？それともひょっとして、もっと重い病気か、怪我か何かで。
いえ、それが、むしろ逆で、うちのばあちゃんの話だと、昨日の昼に、うちの店に豆腐を買いに来たらしいんです。
Oh, Tomita's family runs a tofu shop, added Okamura.
豆腐屋さんに、買い物？
Why scary music there? My voice sounded so stupefied, even I can tell. It was understandable. I was worried about what grave illness or injury she had, when the person herself had been out and about, shopping for tofu.
で、里子はどうだったんだよ？元気そうだったのか？それとも病み上がりで、マスクでもしてたとか、松葉杖で包帯だらけだったとか。
いえ、別に、病気とか怪我とか、そういうわけじゃなかったらしいんですが。
I should have felt relieved that it wasn't an illness or an injury. But my anxiety wasn't going away, because Tomita and Okamura's expression weren't looking any better.
絹ごし豆腐を一丁買っていったそうなんですが、ばあちゃんが言うには、おかしいと。
おかしい？なぜ？絹ごし豆腐を買って何が悪い？
Irritated by how roundabout they were being, I had to desperately fight that irritation from creeping into my voice.
北条と古出って、ほら、二人暮らしで、そんなにお金持ちってわけじゃないですよね。だから、二人はいつも安い木綿豆腐しか買わないんです。一番高い絹ごし豆腐なんか、買ったことないんです。
木綿だって絹ごしだって、どっちも豆腐だろ？たまにはうまい豆腐が食いたくなっただけかもしれないじゃないか。
それは、そうですけど。
I knew how transparent I sounded right then. This wasn't anything trivial. It was some kind of important clue. Not the cheap firm tofu, but the expensive soft kind. Shopping not in the evening after school, but in the middle of the day. I couldn't figure out what those things meant. As I thought hard about it, Okamura took his turn to speak.
次は僕っすね。これも噂なんですけど、帰ってきたらしいんですよ。
帰ってきた？何が？誰が？
北条のおじさんが。
Satoko's uncle. Right, I think Coach told me about him. Their aunt and uncle had taken them in after Satoko and Satoshi lost their parents in the accident.
去年のお社様のたたりで怖くなって町に逃げたっていう北条のおじさんです。こいつ、ヤクザみたいな怖くて乱暴なやつで。
I don't think the Sonozakis like him either. Everything Coach told me came back in bits and pieces. Right. The main aunt and uncle had tormented them all the time. I think he said that after the aunt was beaten to death by the deviant, he ran away to his lover's house in Okonomiya in fear of the curse.
そいつが帰ってくると、どうしてサトコが学校を休んで、真っ昼間に絹ごし豆腐を買う羽目になるんだ？
I'm a little confused. Beaten to death by a deviant. Okay. I think I remember something about that. Unless I'm wrong. My underclassmen climbed up and looked downward. There must have been some big hint buried in there. Even if I didn't understand, if I told Mion or Rena about it, maybe they'd know something.
ごめんな、二人とも。せっかく好意で話を聞かせてくれたのに、なんだか問い詰めるような言い方になっちゃって。
あ、いえ、いいっすよ。北条が重病で寝たきりになってないことが分かっただけでも、ほら、儲けもんじゃないですか。
That might be true, but it still won't make the clouds over my mind fade away.
前原さん、ほらあれ
Okamura cried wildly, pointing over my shoulders behind me. Startled, I turned around, and way on the other side of the schoolyard, near the school gate, I saw a figure trudging forth. No, not Oishi. Oh, okay, good. Oh, no.
北条だ。
Her eyes are dead. I burst into a run faster than I could speak, so that, as quickly as possible, I could see with my own eyes that she was okay.
サトコ！
Satoko seemed taken aback by me shouting and running over to her.
なんですの、圭一さん。突然大声を出して走ってくるから何事かと驚きましたわ。
バカ！俺のことなんかどうでもいいだろう。それより、どうしたってんだよ、サトコ。3日間、俺心配で。
心配性ですわね。たかだか3日ですわよ。もう、圭一さんは心配性なんですから。
From listening to her, she seemed like the normal Satoko, but I could tell she was clearly acting strangely. Her smile was somehow forlorn, and her complexion was bad for some reason.
北条大丈夫だったのかよ。風邪とかじゃないのか？
Tomita and Nakamura both expressed their concerns.
一体、どうしたってんだよ。3日も、俺がどれだけ心配してたか。
ごめんあそばせですわ。ちょっと、お家のお掃除をしたりしてたんですのよ。だいぶ長いこと使ってませんでしたから、もう家中埃だらけでして。
はぁ？サトコ、お前、何を言ってんだ？なんで家の掃除なんかで学校を休まなきゃなんないんだ？
Satoko didn't answer me. Instead, she passed by me and headed for the entrance.
もう、
For 3 days?
今はお弁当の時間ではありませんの？私はお腹が空いてますのよ。
It was certainly lunch break. I couldn't force her to stop after she told me she wanted lunch, since she was so hungry.
まあいいや。リカちゃんは3日間、毎日お前の弁当を持ってきてくれてるんだぜ。
I wonder if this is something that happened to Ryokishi, and this is the excuse that was given, because I think he used to work for the Japanese version of CPS.
今日はちゃんと食べてやれそうだな。とにかく、早く教室へ行こう。みんなを安心させてやろうぜ。
そうですわね。皆さんにご心配をおかけしてしまったかもしれませんわね。あははは。人気者は辛いでございますわ。
I put a hand on Satoko's shoulder and we ran into the classroom together. Up close, I was able to verify Satoko looked somehow weak. All this anxiety that was supposed to go away when I saw her again. That's what I had thought. but now I actually started to have quite different fears. What the heck happened, Satoko? Everyone in the class, of course, reacted in the same exact way I had. We worried about you. I'm glad to see you well. What were you doing for 3 days? Our classmates showered her with questions.
本当にご迷惑をおかけしましたわね。
As she cackled, she chowed down on the bento Rika had made for her. Those in the teacher's lounge must have been informed of Satoko's arrival, because her teacher sprinted into the classroom, her breathing ragged.
北条さん。
あら先生、3日間もご心配をおかけしましたわね。ご覧の通り、元気でピンピンしてますわ。
もう、本当に心配してたんですからね。
も
お弁当が食べ終わったら、職員室に来るんですよ。いろいろとお話があります。
3日もサボったから、きっと大目玉に違いありませんわね。
Satoko laughed sheepishly while she scratched her head, and the rest of the class burst out into laughter. The teacher was acting angry, but she breathed a sigh of relief at seeing Satoko healthy and smiling as she ate her lunch with the class surrounding her.
でも、安心したよな、レナ。
あ、ごめん。無事でよかったよね。
I looked at Rena and knew. She had a sense that something about Satoko was off too. I looked to see Mion detached from the clamor as well, with a somewhat grim expression. But Rika, on the other hand, was smiling from ear to ear. She spread out the bento boxes one by one as Satoko finished them. I wonder if it's possible she doesn't know anything about this. About her situation. I mean, she obviously knows the family's not well liked, but... Or maybe she's just putting it on the front. It's hard to whatever. Finally, Satoko was satisfied, and after enjoying a thorough conversation with her classmates, remembered that she had been called up to the teacher's lounge.
めんどくさいんですけど、行かないともっと怒られてしまいそうですからね。僕も一緒に行きますですよ。
Yeah, it's impossible for her not to know. Never mind. Satoko rises from her seat, and Rika runs over to her.
ごめんあそばせケイチさん。ちょっと怒られてまいりますわ。
おう。なんだったら、俺も一緒に付き合うぜ。例のカレーの悪口の時、一緒に職員室で怒られた仲じゃないか。
それには及ばないのです。ケイチは、ここでお留守番なのですよ。
Rika's words were gentle, but the firm rejection was clear in her eyes. The two of them exited into the hallway, walking shoulder to shoulder. After seeing them off, the class breathed this collective sigh of relief, broke apart, and went back to their usual lunch break banter. We, however, couldn't go back to how we usually were. Not I, not Mion, and of course not Rena. They stared at the classroom exit Satoko and Rika had left through, their expressions a little distant and grim.
俺たちは仲間だ。そうだろう、みんな。
I blurted out something strange, so Rena and Mika, Mion and Rena turned around with dubious expressions.
俺は仲間に隠し事はしない。だから、さっき聞いたばかりのことを言う。
I told them the stories I heard from Tomita and Nakamura earlier about the tofu shop and how Satoko's uncle had apparently come back. All at once without letting them speak.
これが俺の知るすべてだ。だからミオンもレナもしていることがあるなら話してくれ。
If either of you knows anything...
俺は俺の知るすべてを話したぞ。
I ended my sentence firmly and looked into Mion and Rena's eyes in turn. Rena stared right back at me. Her eyes didn't falter. Without even opening her mouth, I could tell she wasn't hiding anything. Then our gazes turned to Mion, who might know something.
別に、私は隠して黙ってるわけじゃないよ。
Mion couldn't seem to endure our silent stares, and began to talk timidly, as if she was guilty of something.
でも、ケイちゃんが話したなら、私も話さないわけにはいかないよね。
みーちゃん、何か知ってるの？
いや、 里子のおじが帰ってきたっての、この間の日曜日に、ふらっとひなみ沢に帰ってきたって。
どうしてそれを黙ってた？
ごめん。
My angry shout caused Mion to flinch away, look down, and hang her head uncomfortably.
ケイチくん、怒るようなことじゃないよ。
Does Keiichi even know anything about the uncle?
みーちゃん怖がってる。
あ、ごめん。
Oh wait, yeah,
つい
last time.
大声を。
Gochire, I remember. I lowered my head in apology. Mion accepted it, collected herself, and continued. According to her, her uncle's relationship with his lover, whom he had been with in Okonomiya, had collapsed. Yeah, she got. Without anywhere to go, he went back home to Hinamizawa. And on that Sunday, the day of the barbecue, her uncle ran into Satoko and brought her back to the house.
自宅になんで連れ戻すんだよ。
ろくでなしの寄生虫だからね。自分一人じゃ炊事はおろか、掃除一つできないし。
そんな、炊事やお掃除のために、さとこちゃんを連れ戻したっていうの？
I remember that she said she'd been cleaning the house when I met her back at the school gate. A moment later, the pieces fell into place, into the jigsaw puzzle of unease. And as for what the puzzle depicted, when I saw it from afar, I could see the answers clearly.
里子が家に閉じ込められて、いじめられながら家事をやらされてるっていう噂なんだよ。
It's like a slasher noises with that. If you knew that, why didn't you speak up? I nearly yelled at Mion, but hastily stopped myself.
みーちゃん、それ本当なの？
私がこの目で確かめたわけじゃないから、本当かどうかは知らないけど。
Mion looked down again, and staring at the floor, grew quiet.
去年みたいに？意地悪なおじさん夫婦のところで暮らしてた時みたいに？
でもさ、そのおじさんって家事はからっきしなんだろ？里子が重宝なわけだから、何もいじめてるってわけじゃないかもしれないだろ？
ケイチくん、何を根拠に言ってるのか知らないけど、いい加減なことは言わない方がいいよ。
Rena clearly and directly got mad at me. I don't know much about this, so don't talk as though you do. Yes, that's clearly what she meant.
じゃあレナは知ってるのかよ？
私だって知らないよ。今ここで聞くまで、さとこちゃんがおじさんの家に連れ戻されたなんて知らなかったもの。でもね、1年前とはまるで状況が違うの。
状況が違うってどういうことだよ？
サトシくんがいない。
サトシは、すごく妹思いのいい兄だったんだよ。
But didn't, well, whatever.
いつも里子をかばってた。意地悪なおじおばのとばっちりが、少しでも里子にかぶらないように、盾になってくれてた。
家には、意地悪なおじさんとさとこちゃんが二人きりなんだよ。それがどれだけ行き詰まるものか、ケイチくんにだって想像がつくんじゃないかな。ひなみ沢に帰ってきた理由だって、身を寄せてた愛人が蒸発したからでしょ？
Well, it didn't say it was the beginning of the chapter that it was his main girl, so this could be true, but their family might have a problem with him still.
そんな不愉快な理由で帰ってきた人が、どうしてさとこちゃんに優しくできるっていうの？
She was right. It wasn't easy for me to imagine Satoko not being tormented.
ごめん。
あ、こっちこそごめん。問い詰めるような口調になっちゃったね。
An awkward atmosphere floated among us. The three of us remained silent and just stared at the floor. Finally, we heard the principal's bell ringing. The teacher came back with Satoko and Rika at her side.
さあさあ、午後の授業を始めますよ。委員長、号令。起立。ごめんなさいね。失礼。
I couldn't read anything from Satoko's vaguely sheepish expression, but given the clouded look Rika was wearing behind her, it was tough to laugh off the disquieting story I'd heard from Mion.
よーし、久々に全メンバーが揃ったからね。久しぶりにパーッと大部活で盛り上がろうじゃないの。
Perfect. Indeed, in times like these, the best thing to do was obviously to get rowdy and scheme against one another in a club activity.
望むところだよ。ねえ、さとこちゃん。やろう。
さとこが好きだったゲームあるでしょ。ほら、なんだったっけ。なんでも構わないよ。言ってみ。
Mion laughed happily, took a bunch of games out of the club locker and lined them up on the desks. I think that was the first time Mion's ever let someone else decide on a game for her. I could tell she was being especially considerate to Satoko, thinking that whatever her circumstances, if we could just enjoy our time together as a group, then that might be some comfort, some diversion. Satoko seemed to understand her feelings too, and smiled vaguely, though pleased. But her head slowly moved from side to side.
ありがたいですけど、お気持ちだけで結構ですわ。いろいろしなければならないことがありますので。
Even Rika hung her head in remorse.
おい、本気なわけ？部活メンバーが久しぶりに揃ったってのに、お流れになっちゃうわけ？敵前逃亡は罰ゲームってのは、快速第何条だったっけ？
やめなよ、みーちゃん。無理に付き合わせちゃダメだよ。
別におじさんは無理強いしてるわけじゃないよ。ただ、大盛り上がりした方が絶対に楽しいと思って。
本当にお気持ちだけで嬉しいんですのよ。ご安心なさいませ。次に戦うときは皆さんまとめてでっかい罠にはめてご覧に入れますわ。
Satoko, while insulting us, said she couldn't participate in the club today and apologized. She quickly put her things in her bag and pattered out into the hallway, disappearing. It all happened in the blink of an eye.
さとこ。
Rika stared lonesomely as her friend hurried home, unable to be part of the club activities. Silence filled the classroom. Both the cheerful voices of her classmates in the schoolyard and the voices of the cicadas sounded like they were coming from some faraway world.
つまんないの？
The silence was broken by Mion's bitterness as she began putting the games out on the desk back into the locker. Everyone just stared absently at Satoko's desk, now empty.
リカちゃん、そろそろ話してくれてもいいんじゃないかな。
Rena made as gentle a smile as she could and spoke softly to Rika. Even without hearing it from her, we pretty much knew the situation at this point. Satoko's uncle had broken up with his lover and maybe come back home to Hinamizawa. And he had taken Satoko's back home and forced her to do all the housework. And that all had to be pretty rough on her. Thinking this was common knowledge to everyone, I scripted to the important part.
だいぶひどいのか？
Maybe Mion and Rena wanted to ask the same question. Nobody spoke. We all just stared, waiting for Rika's reply. Rika still didn't answer us. We were hoping for her to say no, but her silence was a bad enough sign. I wonder why she's not saying anything though.
去年だっけ？おじ夫婦の元にいた時もこんな状況だったんだろ？
あの時は、夫婦喧嘩のとばっちりみたいなのがほとんどだったからさ。こうして部活で時間を潰して、家にいる時間を極力減らすのも一つの手だったんだけど。
今は家事を強制されてるから、学校に残ることもできないんだね。
Shiiza. Satoko's not a slave. Who do you think you are, ignoring your own inability to live properly, basically putting Satoko under house arrest?
常識的に考えて、こんなのおかしいんじゃねえのか？いろいろと状況証拠は必要だろうけど、こういうのって虐待だろ？警察とかに通報できないのかよ？
そうだよね。体罰の証拠とかがあれば、警察に通報できると思うよ。あるいはそういうのって、地域の民生委員さんとかに相談できないの？
Renai and I kept saying police, police as though it were nothing, but Mion's response sounded like she thought we were being a little naive.
みんな簡単に言ってくれるけどさ、それを立証するリスクを考えたことある？
リスクって、なんだよ。
一昨年の冬かな。通報したんだよ。児童相談所に。虐待があるからすぐに何とかしてくれって。
そうだったんだ。それで？
電話してすぐにお役所の人が来てくれたよ。で、聡子とか聡とかに事情聴取してた。ついでにおじ夫婦のところにもね。
サトコとサトシに聞くまではいいが、おじ夫婦にまで聞くのはまずいんじゃないのか？
両者の意見を聞いて総合的に判断するんだとさ。
I'm sure this seems fair to them, but it's not really, it's very bad for the victim.
ご立派ご立派。
で、結果はどうだったの？
様子見。
様子見って、なんだよそれ！
This sucks.
おじさん、とっても勉強になっちゃったんだけどさ、法律ではね、暴行か育児放棄が認められなきゃ虐待とは言わないんだってさ。聡子も聡もよく小づかれてたらしいけど、別に傷跡が残るようなレベルじゃなかったし、3食の飯も一応食えてたし、心理的外傷を与える言動だって別にカセットテープで証拠があったわけじゃないし、村の人たちだって実際に乱暴してる現場は見たことないからね。いくら意地悪だからって人前で乱暴はしないでしょ、誰だって。
で、その後どうなったの？
しばらくは毎週決まった日に民生委員さんが訪問してたみたい。おじ夫婦も自分たちが見張られてることを気にして目立ついじめはしなくなったらしいけど、それで済むわけないでしょ普通。
より陰湿ないじめ方に加速していったってことだね。
Mion sighed and nodded.
おばのやつが特にねちっこくってさ、女特有の陰湿さっていうのかな。相当いやらしいことをしてたらしいよ。聡子、最後の方は呼吸するだけのボロ人形みたいだった。
So what? From that conclusion, does that mean they should have never have contacted child welfare in the first place? Did we ever meet the aunt in the anime? I don't think we did.
わかった？誰の目にも明らかな虐待の証拠がなかったらお手上げなんだよ。むしろ状況を悪化させかねない。あれは失敗だった。
After hearing that even public organizations, the one thing they thought was dependable, couldn't do anything, everyone hung their heads.
つまり、誰の目にも明らかな虐待の証拠が見つかるまで通報すべきでないってことなんだね。
うん。まあ、そういうこと。
Maybe this is real Kishi saying this is how you're supposed to do it back then. I don't know. I considered Satoko's current situation. She was brought back to her house. It was a little difficult to call that abuse. She was being tormented and forced to do the chores. How she was being tormented would be the key, but without concrete evidence, it would be difficult to prove. If she had some kind of external injury, that would work. But as far as we could tell from today, she had nothing like that. And being forced to do the chores, that was a bit weak too. There had to be better evidence that she was without a doubt being abused. I know. Her uncle had ignored Satoko's existence for a whole year and went to live with his lover in town. Neglect? Maybe. Didn't that fall under one of the definitions of abuse that Mion had mentioned? Child neglect?
うん。それは立派な育児放棄だね。どうなのみーちゃん。
おじが今もいなければ育児放棄は認定されそうだけど、今この瞬間は同居してるわけでしょ。今までは別居だったけど、心を入れ替えて同居することにしたなんて言われたら、また様子見なんてことになりかねないよ。
Tell Riki she doesn't like wait and see. Once we reported it, we would need to be absolutely sure they'd interpreted it as abuse. Maybe we needed far more concrete evidence, lest we repeat last year's mistake.
なんだか悲しい。ということはつまり、さとこちゃんが乱暴されて大きな傷が残るまで黙って見てろってことなんだよね。
The only plan I can think of was, in the end, just watching and waiting. It left me in shock when I realized that it would be the same policy as that of an official who had made the situation worse. As Mion said, reporting it to a public agency would be a gamble. If we're going to pick a fight, it would have to be one we couldn't afford to lose. If we were gambling without enough money, without enough evidence, our defeat would be assured. If we took the time to amass enough money that we could be sure of victory, then that would mean pretending we didn't see Satoko's plight for a considerable amount of time.
こんなところで話を振ってごめんな。
I wonder if things are better in Japan now.
リカちゃんはどうして一人暮らしができるんだ？
Rika had lost her parents, if I recalled correctly. From what I'd heard, she had no relatives either. She was forced to live on her own as a result, but her life was unfeathered, free from restriction. If she could somehow grant that freedom to Satoko too.
ほら、リカちゃんって両親いないのに生活してるだろ。
Yeah, why are we allowing that?
保護者のいない子供って孤児院みたいなところに入れられちゃうんじゃないっけ？
ケイチくん、それひどい。
悪口で言ってるんじゃねえよ。そこにサトコを救うヒントがあるかもしれないと思って聞いてみただけなんだ。リカちゃん、気分を害したならごめんな。
Rika shook her head, not particularly disturbed.
それはですね、実は村長さんちの子供になっているからなのです。
What?
補足がいるね。村長の君吉のおじいちゃんがリカちゃんの保護者なんだよ。ちゃんと県知事の許可を得た正式な。
It was Sonozaki, right? So the two families taking care of the third. Well, not really. They're neglecting the third as well.
養子みたいなものか？
養子とは違う。別に籍を入れなくても保護者にはなれるんだよ。
分かってきた。
I don't get it.
つまり、リカちゃんは普通に暮らしてるけど、法律の上では村長さんの家に住んでることになってるんだね。
まあそんなとこ。そのおかげでリカちゃんは孤児院送りを免れてるってわけ。孤児院っていうか児童養護院のことだけど。
Well, I mean, she's a special circumstance, so it won't be so bad for her, I guess, but for like an actual child.
難しいことはよくわかりませんが、つまりはそういうことなのです。
For an actual child, this would be horrible.
ミオン、今興味深いことを言ったな。席が違っても保護者になれるみたいなことを言ったよな。じゃあ形だけでも村長さんとかがサトコの保護者になってくれればいいんじゃないのか？
The mayor's family, Kimiyoshi's, and her family won't do that. Then she'd be in the same position as Rika, and she could go back to her old life.
ところがそうはいかないの。だっておじだって保護者のつもりなんだもん。
ちょっと待て。 わけがわからなくなったぞ。そもそも保護者ってなんだ？
In legal terms, a guardian and a parent weren't necessarily synonyms. Oh man, we're really getting into the nitty gritty of the CPS system here. So whoever was actually looking after her at home would be considered her guardian.
なら、おじは保護者じゃないな。ずっと聡子をほったらかしにしてた。
でも保護者だと主張されたらそれまでだよ。聡子が連れ戻されてから数日。その間の食事代はおじの財布から出てるよね。一応面倒を見てると主張できなくもない。それに1年間聡子をほったらかしたとはいえ、最初の1年間は生活の面倒を見た実績がある。でも村長にはその実績はない。
意地悪なおじさんと村長さんが同時に保護者を主張したら、おじさんの方が強いってこと？
その可能性が高いってこと。それに保護者ってのは実際に面倒を見てる人を指すんだよ。実際に寝床や食事を握ってるおじと名義だけ貸そうとしてる村長じゃどうにもならない。
じゃあ、村長が実際に生活の面倒を見ればいいじゃないか。そうすれば、名実ともに村長が保護者になれるんだろう。
We just need to shelter Satoko. That might lead to her uncle being desperate to take her back, but we'll stubbornly refuse him.
そんな簡単にはいかないよ。聡子は育ち盛りの女の子なんだよ。人間一人の面倒を見てくださいなんて、猫の子預けるのとはわけが違う。
じゃあ、監督はどうだよ。
Don't do that.
監督って、よくは知らないけど、裕福なんだろ？自分で言ってたくらいなんだし、本当の親でなくても保護者になれるなら、監督でも可能なんだ。監督なら、聡子の面倒を立派に見てくれる気がする。
だから、聡子をペットみたいに考えないでって。ケイちゃんはさっきから、聡子を誰かに押し付ける話ばっかり。人間一人の生活の面倒を見る責任ってものをもっと慎重に考えて。監督に聞いたの？聡子を引き取って面倒を見るって、ちゃんと確約を得たわけ？
Yeah, just talk.
そんなの得てないよ。でも、監督なら絶対に OK するだろ
う。まあいいよ。100歩譲って監督が OK したとするよ。でもダメなんだよ。保護者は独身じゃダメなんだよ。
That's right. Coach, didn't he say it himself? He was alone, so he couldn't do it. What the hell? Why is it being single such a disadvantage in this society? Then all you could do is marry into a wealthy family, couldn't you?
ひなみ沢にそんなお金持ちはいるのかな？難しそう。
Wait, are they saying marry Satoko?
ね。簡単じゃないんだよ。人間一人引き取るってのは。
Oh no, for Coach to marry someone rich, I don't know. It's hard to adopt someone.
誰かに押し付けようなんて短絡的な考えがそもそもダメなの。考えが浅いんだよ、ケイちゃんは。
なんなんだよ、畜生俺は必死に聡子を救おうと考えてるのに、ダメだってそればっかり。お前ら、本当は聡子のことなんかどうでもいいんだろ。
It's a lot of frustration
仲間のこと、本気で心配してないんだろ。
from Ryokishi.
どうなんだよ。
そんなつもりないよ。でも、そう簡単にはいかないっていうか。
そんな難しい話じゃねえだろ。裕福な奴が、聡子をしばらく面倒見てくれればいい。それだけのことだぞ。そうだ。ミオンチはどうだよ。お前、御三家とかいう立派な家柄なんだって自慢してたよな。
She does?
話じゃ、ものすごいでかい家に住んでるそうじゃないか。
うち？無理。そんなの、バチャが許してくれるはずない。
Try a little bit harder.
じゃあ、沖宮に住んでる親はどうだよ。聞いた話じゃ、こっちもかなりの豪邸に住んでるらしいじゃないか。町には親類の経営する店がたくさんあるそうだし、立派な資産家じゃないかよ、おい。
ダメ。沖宮の家なんてもっとダメ。うちのお父さん、そんなの絶対に許さない。
おい。普段は散々大物ぶりを自慢しといて、ここ一番で及び腰かよ。
Miss going crazy.
なんなんだよ。 お前、里子を見殺しにする気かよ。
そんなつもりはないけど。そりゃ、私だって里子は助けてやりたいよ。でも、それとこれじゃ、話が。
話が違うってのかよ。冷てえやつ。仲間の危機だろ。ここで救わなかったら何なんだよ。部長だろ。部活の。救えよ。仲間の危機をよ。今ここで救わなかったら仲間じゃねえ。人じゃねえ。お前の人間性が問われてるんだよ。
Calm down.
聞いてるのかよ、ミオン。
My emotions all exploded out of me, and I didn't even give her a chance to say anything in response. I just wanted to make Mion agree with me, even if I had to force her. That's real. Yeah, I think that's the real thing. If she did, Satoko's problem would be solved. If pushing her would solve the issue, then I'd push her as much as I needed to.
何さっきから黙り込んでんだよ。聞いてるのかこの野郎。どうなんだよ。なんとか言ってるよ、その崎ミオン。
みー
Feels bad, man. Mion, looking down with a grim face, began sobbing. Her hands were clenched into trembling fists, and she rubbed her eyes to wipe away the tears. Was what I said actually that mean? Well, you said you don't care about your friend, you're not doing anything. This isn't the time to cry. We're in the gambling room now, and we have to do something to save Satoko. And as I thought that, Rena spoke, her voice cold and incredibly calm.
ケイチくん、みーちゃんちがダメなら、他の裕福な家を探したら？私、ひなみ沢に立派な豪邸建てて住んでる人。
Good
知っ
point.
てるよ？
誰だよ。
Yeah, why didn't you do this
白々
earlier?
しいよ。あれだけ立派な家に住んでて、自分の家だけは蚊帳の外？
俺んちかよ。俺の家は。
仲間なんでしょ？救ってよ、ケイチくんが。みーちゃんはダメだってさ、冷たいから。
I like this, throwing it back in his face.
じゃあ仲間思いのケイチくんがお手本示さなきゃダメだね。あれだけ大きなお家に家族3人で住んでるんだっけ？じゃあ空き部屋なんかいくらでもあるよね。余ってるお部屋、いくつかさとこちゃんに分けてあげればいいじゃない。それでめでたくさとこちゃんの悩みは解決。
I wonder if, I don't know much about Keiichi's parents, but I feel like the dad's kind of like a hippie. He might agree to this.
あら何？
Although then you have to contend with Teppei.
これでもう終わり？あっけない話だったね。はいはい解決、お疲れ様。じゃあもう今日はいい？私帰るね。ランランラン。
But I really like this.
今日は久しぶりに宝探しにでも行こうかな。昨日まではずっとさとこちゃんのことが心配で全然遊ぶ気になんかならなかったし。今日はどんな宝物が見つかるかな？はなんか言ってよ。
It's an aggressive howl.
私だけ喋りずくめ？
Why?
黙ってんじゃないわよ。聞いてんの？前原圭一！
It's pretty good. Even the cicadas seemed to cower in fear. Rena, her shoulders bobbing up and down, and me, who had forgotten to breathe. Mion, whose face had gone completely pale, and Rika, who was keeping silent as if nothing had happened. The atmosphere in the classroom grew tight and stiff, and it petrified us where we stood. The sound of the chair as Rena sat back down after having stood up finally allowed everyone present to take a breath. Rena had shown me just how much I'd hurt Mion.
レナが怖いのです。
That was awesome. After a few moments, Rika cut into the frozen air.
ごめんね、リカちゃん。みーちゃんもごめん。ケイチくんには謝らなくてもいいよね。
ああ、ごめん。めちゃくちゃなこと言って悪かった。
Well, everyone's
さっ
just
きのあ
frustrated.
れ、私に言ってたの？みーちゃん睨みながら言ってたから、私てっきりみーちゃんに言ってるもんだとばかり思ってた。
Rena had such strength that you wouldn't have imagined it normally. All I did was spout terrible things as a wave of violent fury passed over me. I couldn't contend with her.
ミオン、ごめん。頭に血が上ってた。
Come to think of it, I didn't understand what had gotten me that riled up. I thought of myself as Satoko's Nini, so I only had good intentions, that I'd think about it a little harder than everyone else, and yet...
うん。いいよ。私こそ、ケイちゃんが一生懸命悩んでるのに、あれはダメ、これはダメばっかり言って。ごめんね。私も、悪かった。
Because it's frustrating, you want to help your friend, and then you get into pragmatic answers about why it won't work again and again, and then you just lashed out on her because she just kept saying no to him. Mion rubbed away the tears at the corners of her eyes with her fists and apologized as well. We bowed our heads to each other and looked down without glancing at each other. Someone, I don't know who, heaved a sigh. Satoko being tormented had been known about since last year. How had the tragedy back then saved Satoko? How had they brought it to an end? Right. In the end, nobody could do anything. All they could do was bear it patiently and wait for those agonizing days to end. That's right. The one who brought an end to those terrible days was some crazy drug addict no one knew. On the night of Watanagashi last year, their mean aunt had been beaten to death. But it hadn't been done to save Satoko or Satoshi. It was really just a coincidence. Satoko's friends, who needed to do something for her most of all, could do nothing. The incident may have been a tragic one, but from Satoko's viewpoint, it was nothing less than a miracle. Yeah, a miracle. A miracle one can only wait for.
待つしかないのかよ。俺たちには。
Actually, you know, I still don't remember exactly what was the cause of all the deaths prior to this year. So the aunt being killed by a drug addict, I think that was a cover story, right? That didn't actually, that was it the Sonozakis or was it, I don't remember. Not for evidence of abuse, not for something that minor.
何をかな?
奇跡。
No one made fun of me for using such a crazy word. We couldn't come up with any solutions, so it was the only thing we could do.
無力なんだよ。私たちは。
That one word Mion dropped was the finishing blow. It was hot. My body was sticky with sweat. The worst month, June. We're in July now, it's even hotter. I walked forward quite a ways, then turned right where the rice fields ended. I'd never come here before, so I had no idea where to go. I got lost several times, so I may have taken quite a long way around. Maybe I should have gone back home and gotten my bike first. It would have made everyone else worried if I'd asked them, so I asked one of our other classmates where Satoko's actual house was. The house was originally her family's, apparently, not her uncle's or his wife's. Their house had been bigger, so they had taken it for themselves. Right here. Several houses all in a line. Over there? I was visiting Satoko's house, but didn't particularly intend to meet her there. I didn't mean to spy on the enemy, her mean uncle either. Maybe I just wanted to be closer to her as her Nini. Pretty words, but I didn't know if they were true. If what Tomita and the others told me was right, it'd be this house. When I recognized it, my feet grew heavy. What did I come here for? My motive for coming here was absurd. What Mion had said at the end was that we were powerless and maybe sort of frustrated. I just wanted to do something, anything other than waste the days away praying for a miracle. That's what made me come here. But that was all. Even if I were to witness her uncle actually tormenting Satoko, what could I do? How would I act like a comic book hero, punch the guy in the face, and take Satoko away with me? And then live together somewhere far away? That was ridiculous.
無力だ。
The cicadas' voices, raised in chorus, sounded like they were scoffing at me, as though they were saying that if I couldn't do anything and wouldn't do anything, that I should just go back home. I heard a car approaching, so I got out of its way. But the car stopped right behind me, its horn honking shortly once. Annoyed, hadn't I gotten out of the way, I looked behind me, and a familiar face was looking out at me from the driver's seat window.
監督。
Oh, I thought it was Oishi.
こんにちは、前原さん。こんなところでお会いするとは、本当に奇遇です。お家は近くなんですか？
Me being here wasn't normal. Just as I considered somehow giving him the slip, I noticed Satoko sitting in the passenger seat.
さとこ？
Satoko got out of the car and began unloading a lot of groceries from the trunk.
買い物の帰りに偶然監督にお会いしたんですのよ。送ってくださるというので、お言葉に甘えたのですわ。
自転車でこんなに買い物をしたら、運びきれませんからね。
As Coach spoke, he pulled Satoko's bike from out the back seat where they'd put it. The groceries bags were big. There were 4 of them. They all seemed to be packed full and very heavy.
この袋、セブンスマート？おいおい、自転車で行くにはちょっと遠すぎないか？
I looked at the bags and saw they were all filled to the brim with sake bottles, snacks that you'd eat with sake, and boxes of cigarettes. Their weight was one thing, but their contents was nothing less than luxury items.
監督のおかげで助かりましたわ。ちょっと坂道は辛かったですから。
Satoko gave Coach a smile filled with gratitude, but it was incredibly awkward and even heart-rending.
さとこ、この買い物、今晩の晩飯ってわけじゃないだろ？
当然ですわ。私、お酒なんか飲めませんし、おつまみも嫌いですし、タバコなんか吸うわけ。
He made Satoko go to a distant store by herself on her bike. She could buy dumb shit like this? And what was the uncle doing right now anyway? He must have been working up a good sweat at this very moment if he needed to send Satoko out by herself, right? If not, then how much had Satoko suffered for no reason? I hadn't intended to voice my feelings, but they may have made it into my face. Coach might have noticed because he clapped me on the shoulder. Just then, one of the house windows clattered open, and the face of the vulgar man, the sight of which made me intentionally avert my eyes, emerged from within it. There was no self-introductions necessary. My gut told me that this was the uncle in question. The first thing out of his mouth should have been words of gratitude for Satoko.
さとこ、缶のガスかけっぱなしで出よったんな、この。
ごめんなさい。でも、すぐに買いに行けって言ったから。
やかましいわ。せっかくの銀条台無しにしよってん。どうしよったんじゃ。
ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。
Why is she acting like this, though? Satoko miserably apologized over and over, bowing again and again. I mean, what is he doing to her that... And it's not leaving marks, whatever he's doing to her. She could be perfectly described as a small animal. I had no idea what was happening. Satoko finished shopping for all the heavy stuff that wasn't even for dinner. She only managed to come back because she ran into Coach and he drove her home. If she hadn't been found by him, she'd surely still be by herself, panting and moaning, pedaling her bicycle up that steep hill. What was with those words, those horrible sleazy words that he said to Satoko? In what country's dictionary did it tell him to say such things to a young girl who just finished shopping? My anger, of course, wouldn't reach him. The uncle displayed no interest in me, instead shouting at Coach. Oh, he's getting mouthy with the coach too.
おや、入江の先生じゃないですか。 こんにちは。
Okay, so is this the first time we're learning he's a doctor? No, it's not. I
そし
think.
たら先生も上がっていきますか。もうオーラスですからすぐ入れますよ。ピンのワンツー、何でもありで。
いえ、遠慮します。
You should probably say something.
さとこちゃんとは偶然お会いしたんで、ちょっとお送りしてあげただけです。すぐに失礼します。
そんな、ちょっとぐらいやってってくださいな。先生お金持ちじゃないですか。
I didn't even understand what her uncle and coach were talking about. Probably mahjong. But I knew one thing for sure. None of what he just said had been to thank Satoko in any way.
さとこ、とっととカキも持ってこんかい。ビールも冷めてもうた。冷蔵庫から冷えてるの出してくれな。
てっちゃん、娘に厳しすぎや。もうちょいいたわらんとかいそうやで。
Even his dirtbag friends are like, oh.
あんな娘にはこのくらいでちょうどいいよ。兄貴ん家にいた頃からそうでよ。甘やかすと親の言うことをなんも聞かんやっちゃよ。たく。
それよか、てっちゃんの妻だぜよ。
椿さんリーチしよったで。
おお、悪い悪い。なんね。椿、あんたまたリーチかいな。
It looked like it wasn't just her uncle. Some of his friends were over. Hey, wait. What was he... No, what were they doing? Flinging rude words left and right. Making Satoko go shopping for your beer. What were they doing? Yeah, that's true. Even if his friends were like, hey, calm down. They didn't help her at all. They stood there.
町からおじさまのお友達が来てて、麻雀やってますの。お友達のお夕食もご用意するように言われてますのよ。
なんだよ、それ。
Mahjong. He called his friends over for mahjong. They were too busy playing, so they sent Satoko to buy them a crap load of booze from a faraway store. And the first thing he said to her was how she left the gas on. What the
何
hell?
やってんだよ、あいつ。麻雀って、そんなのに遊びほうけて、さとこにこんなのを買いに行かせるのかよ。
Even though Coach was listening, he pretended he wasn't. Why? Why don't you say something? There was a line of heavy smoking shopping bags lined up on the ground next to the trunk.
さあ、前原さんも手伝ってあげてください。ほら、男の子なんですから、こっちの重い袋を持ちましょう。
監督、こんなのまかり通っていいんですか？こんなの絶対に。
Coach pretended he hadn't heard that violent outburst either. When I thought about it later, his reaction might have been the best thing he could do in that situation. Hmm?
私も2つ持ちますから。ほら、前原さんも持つのを手伝ってあげてください。
Is the reasoning like, oh, Tepe would just be harder on her because, oh, you made me look bad? Something like that?
私も2つ持ちますから。ほら、前原さんも持つのを手伝ってあげてください。
The bags were packed to the brim with bottles of sake and bar snacks. They were so heavy, and so filthy, so unfair. They weren't just heavy in terms of weight, they made me feel mortified. Nothing could have been heavier than that.
ケイチさん、無理しないでいいんですのよ。私も持ちますわ。
Satoko mistook my biting back the humiliation and grimacing under the weight and offered to help.
バカ、俺をなめるな。
Satoko had never looked down on my physical strength in the slightest.
監督もすみませんわね。重いでしょ？
No, not at all, answered Coach, smiling vaguely, coolly. But I alone knew. Coach was an adult, so he knew how to keep his feelings from showing. There was even more anger than I was feeling, burning deep in his eyes.
いや、重いですね。
It wasn't very far to the doorsteps of Satoko's house, but the bag squeezed my palms and started leaving red marks. Fury welled up in me, and the back of my throat stung. But even if it all came gushing out, it wouldn't solve anything. So, just tightly gritting my teeth was as much as I could do.
本当にありがとうございますですわ。監督も、圭一さんも、おかげで本当に助かりましたでございます。
After we carried them to the back door, Satoko said that was enough. Occasionally, we'd hear the repulsive laughing of her uncle and his friends from within, but my insides would seethe. I knew that they weren't ridiculing us, and that was why it made me so mad. They made Satoko shop for all this heavy, selfish stuff, then ignored her and laughed amongst themselves as they pleased. It was deeply aggravating. Of course, Coach had to have felt the same way. But if he accidentally let his feelings slip onto his face, he'd only cause Satoko more worry. He knew all that, and spoke coolly, as if to say he didn't care.
いいえ。ささやかでも、お力になれたなら、お手伝いできそうなことがあったら、いつでも言ってくださいね。
ええ。お気持ちだけでも本当に嬉しいですわ。
That it feels the same way. Those words were sad. Satoko herself was sad and resigned that we could only help her so much. But she was right. No matter how much Coach or I wanted to help Satoko, this was as much as we could do. I felt absolutely ashamed at not having the power to help her any more than this. You know, if she ran away by going with Keiichi or whatever, I bet the uncle wouldn't care, would not report it, I mean, since he probably would want to stay out of the, didn't want to deal with the police or anything. Burning, boiling emotions were bubbling up within me and rising into my throat. Trembling all over, I almost started to cry from the fury.
俺も、力になれることがあったら、いつでも力を貸すから。頑張れよな。
I wanted to at least give her those trite words, saying that I'd help her whenever she wanted.
ええ。ありがとうございますわ。わざわざこうして、ここまで来てくださっただけでも、嬉しかったですわ。
Satoko seemed to have guessed what I was doing in a place like this, when my house was in the opposite direction from school.
さあ、もう行った方がよろしいですわ。今は酔っ払ってますから、どんな難癖をつけられるかわかりませんわよ。
She felt guilty getting us involved after we'd helped her, because she wanted to be the only one to suffer this misfortune. That's how it looked, and it hurt. I handed my supermarket bag over to Satoko, and then I noticed on the back of Satoko's hand there was something that looked like a bruise. Evidence.
おい、サトコ、このあざ、どうしたんだよ。
I knew as much as anyone else how transparent that sounded. I didn't need to hear it from Satoko to know how this bruise came to be.
階段で転んだ時にちょっと打っただけですのよ。気になさらないでくださいませ。
嘘だろ。
Coach nudged me in the back, and then he put his index finger to his mouth to chide me for being so loud.
本当にありがとうございましたですわ。では明日、学校でお会いできるといいですわね。
そんな話してないだろ。その手のあざはどうしたって聞いてるんだよ。
The evening glow finally got to the point where I could see the other concealed oval-shaped bruises and traces of swelling on her neck and her legs and other places too.
階段から落ちたんですの。
The very moment my violent, rampaging emotions were about to burst their way out of my throat, I found my mouth being tightly clamped down on. Coach was pressing down on my mouth from behind, wrapping around me tightly with his hands. Because of that, I couldn't say anything. I could only groan, which I did. That was all I could do. I needed to expel all the magma seeping deep within me, because otherwise I'd surely explode into a million pieces that very moment. So I groaned. I groaned from my mouth, from my whole body, while heat fell in drops from my eyes. I groaned and groaned. I groaned to the point of exhaustion. I wrung absolutely everything out of myself. Even having lost my voice, I was still wringing it all out.
気持ちはわかります。わかりますから、前原さん。今だけこらえてください。お願いですから、前原さん。
Endure it for now? And then what, huh? What would happen to her, to Satoko? Her body and mind were wounded, and she was being made to suffer like this. Can you not even let me howl in vain at it? Is that it, Coach? Are we this powerless, so powerless that we can't even scream from the bottom of our hearts? The voices of the Higurashi made me calm down. I didn't know how long it had been. Satoko abruptly gave a slight bow.
ありがとうございますですわ、ケイチさん。
さとこ。
今、ケイチさんが本当のニーニーみたいに見えました。私の本当のニーニーはいなくなってしまったけど、私にはケイチさんというニーニーがいてくれる。
そうだ。俺が、お前のニーニーだ。お前が、辛い時、絶対に助けてやるから。ニーニーが、サトコをきっと助けてやるからな。
Satoshi Hosho, you fucking idiot. If not now, then when? Satoko, she's never been in more pain and light in her life. If her Nini doesn't save her now, then when will he? Why did you run away? Why did you abandon her? Why did you leave Satoko behind? You don't have any right to call her yourself Satoko's Nini.
俺は、逃げないからな。
え？
絶対に、逃げない。サトシみたいに、お前を見捨てて逃げたりしない。絶対に。
Don't say something that's gonna make her feel bad too.
俺はお前を、見捨てない。
Slip. Tears trickled down from Satoko's eyes. And then she narrowed her eyes into a smile.
さよなら、ニーニー。
Satoko took her right hand and awkwardly waved to me.
大丈夫ですわ。今のニーニーので、私、いっぱい力をもらいましたから。大丈夫。明日まで頑張れますから。大丈夫。だから、今日はさよならでございますわよ。
There was no way that I could say bye, see you tomorrow. And then from inside the house came a throaty, disgusting voice.
サトコ！はよ、乾きも持ってこんかい！
さ、ニーニー、早く行ってくださいませ。もう、私は大丈夫ですから、早く。
行きましょう。前原さん、これ以上は、かえってさとこちゃんに迷惑をかけます。
監督、ニーニーのお家は、ちょっと遠いんですの。申し訳ございませんが、送ってあげていただけます？
ええ、わかりました。
Coach grabbed me by my collar, and with strength I couldn't have imagined him having, started dragging me away. And I, unable to oppose him, started getting farther away from Satoko. She waved her hand to us, expression still dark, and disappeared through the back door. Coach got into the car first, and then turned around on the narrow path and drove the passenger side door around for me, or brought it to me.
前原さんの気持ちは痛いくらいにわかります。いえ、 前原さん以上にでも、今この場だけはこらえてください。あなたの心は確かに伝わりましたから。だから、こらえてください。でないと。
もう、わかってます。すみません。さっきはありがとうございました。
I meekly got into the passenger seat. The car accelerated quietly, and Satoko's house grew farther and farther away in the rear view mirror. We made a wide turn, and then I couldn't see her house anymore.
え？あなたのお家、そんな遠くなんですか？学校の反対側じゃないですか。
I didn't bother to reply. I would have been hard-pressed to give him an answer as to why I was at Satoko's house. Coach didn't say anything more either. For a while, the two of us grew silent, and the only sounds from the gravel spraying over the road as we drove. I remembered how Rena said things were different from last year. At the same time, she had Satoshi with her. Satoshi protected Satoko, so that less of the sparks fell onto her.
でも今は、サトシはいない。
はい。残酷ですが、それが事実です。
Coach seemed to understand what I really meant when I said that.
悲しく、あまりに残酷な話ですが、私たちの決意や努力、尽力には限界があります。
It sounded like an excuse, but he was right. Even if Coach and I wanted to be people Satoko could depend on, that was all. It ended at the front door. No matter how much I shouted that I would be her Nini, no matter how much I shouted that I wouldn't abandon her, and no matter how much Satoko called me Nini, I couldn't do it any more than that.
サトシは一体、どこに行っちまったんですか？
Right, Satoshi was another story. Her actual brother, Satoshi, he was in a position to protect her from far, far better than we could. That was the cold, sad truth of the massive gulf between Satoshi and us.
今頃、どこでどうしているんでしょう。
Okay, don't you know? Okay, I'm trying to. I can't exactly remember. I don't know. Let's just save it for now. Satoshi left home. I didn't know why. Maybe it was because Oyashiro-sama's curse, or he disappeared, or something. In any case, he wasn't beside Satoko now. At the time Satoko needed him to protect her the most, he wasn't there.
どうして、今ここにいないんですか？一番守ってやらなければならないこの時に。
お社様のたたりがどうとか、いろいろ言われてますが、家出したとしか言えません。
Why are you saying that?
ある日を境に帰ってこないって仲間が言ってました。妹の聡子に書き置き一つ残さずに家出を。
サトシ君はコツコツとアルバイトをしてたんです。サトコちゃんが当時とても大きなぬいぐるみを欲しがってましてね。結構いい値段らしくて、そのためにアルバイトをいろいろとしていたらしいんです。妹思いの兄でしたからね。おじ夫婦のもとで不憫な生活を強いられている妹に少しでも立派な誕生日プレゼントを贈ろうとしているんじゃないかってみんな囁き合っていました。
In the end, he didn't use his savings for a birthday present for Satoko.
サトシ君がいなくなり、警察がいろいろと調べたら、サトシ君の貯金が当日すべて本人によって下ろされていることが分かりました。方々をいろいろと調べた結果、その貯金を資金に東京の方に行ったんではないかということになりました。
東京？何しに？
家出としか言いようがないじゃないですか。
自分が逃げ出すための資金をコツコツと貯めて、そこまでは勝手ですよ。でも、聡子を置いてくことはないじゃないですか。同じ家出するなら、聡子も連れて行くべきだった。
Even now, Coach was still calm. He wasn't trying to pour any oil on the fire of my anger at all. He just waited until my anger naturally subsided. After listening to gravel being crushed under the wheels for a little while, Coach spoke abruptly.
察してください。 置いていかれた聡子ちゃんも同じ考えに至ったんです。
I'm a burden on my brother, and that's why he abandoned me. He didn't take her with him when he left. How terrible must Satoko have felt being betrayed by her brother she loved so much. I'm gonna have some questions later.
でも、聡子ちゃんはとても強い人でした。もちろん、親しい友人たちの支えもあってのことでしたが、ああして笑顔を取り戻すことができました。
I recalled how Satoko had spoken of Satoshi so brightly when I was eating dinner with her and Rika a few days ago. At the time, I didn't think any more of it than how pleasant their sibling love had been. But now that I did think about it, I realize it was like she was peering into the distance from atop a pile of tragic perseverance.
サトシ君はきっと帰ってくる。その時までにお荷物じゃなくなった自分を見てほしいって。
サトコはお荷物なんかじゃないですよ。あいつ、俺なんかよりよっぽど生活力はあるし、大抵のことは何だってできる。そりゃ、レナやリカちゃんなんかと比べれば劣る点はたくさんあるかもしれないけど、そこいらのやつよりよっぽど一人前ですよ。
サトシ君がいつ帰ってきてもいいように、そういう風になれるよう努力した結果です。涙ぐましい努力があったんですよ。
While she lived with Rika, while Rika taught her how to handle everything flawlessly, all so that she could welcome back Satoshi at any time, so that she could show him how she wasn't ashamed.
で、そのサトシはいつ帰ってくるんですか？
I asked Coach, but knew he wouldn't be able to answer. In any case, Satoshi ran away. He left Satoko and ran away from Hinamizawa. Someone said that when you leave Hinamizawa and run away, Oyashiro-sama's curse gets you, right? Then that made sense. Satoshi ran away, and his disappearance, that would obviously mean people thought it was the curse, right? And they could smile, as though it were his own fault, as though he got what he deserved. Hey Oyashiro-sama, whoever you are, Satoshi didn't vanish because you ran away. You deemed him away with your curse, didn't you? If that's not what happened, then I won't forgive you.
サトシはいつ頃逃げ出したんですか？
去年の綿流しのお祭りの夜、おばが異常者に殺されて、その数日後のサトコちゃんの誕生日にです。
サトコの誕生日に？
I slammed my hands on the dashboard in front of me with all my might. Satoshi, of all the days, he could have chosen to run away. Their aunt had just died a few days before, didn't she? All your days of suffering were about to end, weren't they? You were just about to start thinking about a new life, weren't you? It's wrong to be happy about someone dying, but for Satoko and her brother, her birthday had come at a critical turning point. Their mean uncle had fled town, and their siblings would be left alone, They should have been able to be happy about that. On Satoko's birthday, Satoko was probably waiting for her brother to return the whole time. Waiting for her brother to return when he never did. Waiting with bated breath for her brother to return, her hopes and dreams of a new life to come growing ever larger. But no matter how long she waited, he didn't come back. He didn't even contact her. Satoko, trembling in anticipation of a great present, just when would she have to face the cold, terrible truth? Satoshi, you fucking idiot. I could feel my blood rising to my head, and my anger at Satoshi. I was frustrated. I was aggravated. I couldn't forgive him. Satoko still respected and adored her brother, and yet he heartlessly betrayed her. Such a person wouldn't just come back. Now, when he was most needed. Yes, no one would protect her. Not even her real brother Satoshi.
だから、あなたがニーニーだと認めてもらえて嬉しかったです。
え？
私もサトコちゃんの幸せを祈る一人ですが、社会的立場があり、 日中は仕事をしている身です。私がさとこちゃんのために割いてあげられる時間は少ない。でもあなたは違います。学校で生活を共にし、さとこちゃんやさとしくんとも年はほとんど離れていない。あなたは自分ができることに限りがあると思っていますが、それでも私よりはずっとさとこちゃんに手を差し伸べられる場所にいるのです。だから私の分までさとこちゃんの力になってあげてほしい。そう願っています。
そんなことは監督だって。
もちろん年季のある私だからこそできる助けだっていろいろあると思います。同じようにあなたにしかできない助けだってあるということです。私たちは互いにそれを全うすべきだと申し上げたいのです。
Was that a little too complicated? Coach added that, but I shook my head in response. When I heard him say he had job skills, it reminded me that he was an adult, in a different position from all of us. Maybe I should ask him about it.
監督は法律とか詳しいですか？
いえ、平均的に疎いですが、何か。
I thought back to when I argued with Mion and the others about Satoko. Our children's argument had left us with the conclusion that we had to wait and see, but what would an adult think?
児童福祉法でしたっけ？児童の安全を確保するために緊急措置として親子を分離させるという方法があるそうです。
緊急措置？じゃあすぐに聡子をおじの元から救い出せるということじゃないですか。
聡子ちゃんがそれを望まないかもしれません。
Huh?
虐待されている本人が避難を望まなければ弱いでしょうから。
Alright.
聡子が望まない？どうして？
Stubbornness. Just a little kid, man. I didn't know why he didn't. It was clear as day that Satoko's uncle was being violent and treating her like a slave. So then why? I clamped down on my frenzied emotions and waited intently for Coach to answer. But he never did. It wasn't like he was pretending he hadn't heard me. If I had to say, it was more like he wanted to explain, but couldn't put it into the right words.
聡子ちゃんは多分そういういじめに耐えるのを試練だと考えているかもしれません。
This to self-flagellation.
試練？変な宗教じゃあるまいし。
ご存知と思いますが、サトシ君は聡子ちゃんをずっとかばってきました。聡子ちゃんもずっとサトシ君に頼ってきました。甘えてきたと言うべきかもしれません。
I'd known for a while that Satoshi had always protected Satoko from their aunt and uncle. But that was his duty as an older brother and not something to worry about.
それがトラウマになったかもしれないんですよ。自分が兄にもたれかかりすぎたから、兄が自分を嫌ってしまったんではないかってね。
And for Satoko, the current situation was a retelling of the story of a little over a year ago. But this time, Satoshi wasn't here.
だから、誰にも頼らずに自分の力だけで試練を乗り越えたい。そういう力を身につけなければ、サトシ君は帰ってこない。そういう考えになっている。と、私は考えます。
Now that he mentioned it, Satoko had never said a word about how hard it had been before. I figured that she was being threatened not to talk about it, but...
みんなと相談して児童相談所とかに通報すべきかなんて話をしてました。
聞いてますよね。昨年も福祉士さんが聡子ちゃんのところに行ってるのは。
はい。結局様子見で余計にいじめられたって話も。
あれ、聡子ちゃんが自分で通報したらしいんです。で、その結果、余計いじめが水面下へ移行してエスカレートした。聡子ちゃんに降りかかるいじめも増え、それをかばうサトシ君の負担も著しく増えた。
ひょっとして聡子、それ通報した自分の責任だなんて思ってるんじゃ。
Coach nodded quietly.
多分、聡子ちゃんに通報の話をするととても嫌がるが、その必要はないと 強がりを言うと思います。聡子ちゃんに内緒で通報したとしても、福祉士に対して自分は虐待を受けていないと言い張るでしょうね。
I was going to say maybe it could also be like a fear of the unknown of being apart from someone not her family, but she has been with Rika and also she reported her herself before. Satoko always acts tough and doesn't readily admit defeat, so I could imagine that easily.
一応児童相談所には裁判所の許可も当事者の許可も一切不要で緊急措置ができる強い権限があるんだそうです。虐待が公然の事実なら聡子ちゃんが否定しても身柄は強制的に保護されるでしょう。それは聡子ちゃんにとっては負けを意味するものなのかもしれませんが。
勝ち負けの問題じゃないですよ。聡子は現実に。
話を折りますが、身柄が保護されると養護院等の施設に送致されます。そうするとですね、そこで暮らすことになるので、つまり引っ越しということになります。
This also reminds me of that the anime Erased, and the best part of that was the beginning part with the abuse and the CPS part of that.
ですから学区変更で転校にもなります。
転校は仕方ないです。それであいつが保護されるなら。
聡子ちゃんはその辺の事情も知っています。だからますます保護を望みません。
どうして？
あの家でサトシ君の帰りを待つのが聡子ちゃんの生きる理由だからですよ。兄に捨てられ廃人同然になりかけた少女が何に生きる理由を見出したか、あなたのでなく聡子ちゃんの価値観で考えてあげてください。
But sometimes, like, that their point of view is really toxic to themselves, and you got to help them out, even though, you know, they think they need to be in that situation. I felt like he was trying to confuse me with that hard to understand, roundabout way of talking so unique to adults. The point was that I couldn't do anything about Satoko wanting to stay in that house, and that I should watch until she gives in. In the end, no matter what I said, Coach himself was saying to wait and see.
俺はわかりませんよ。
はい？
俺は本当に聡子が危ないと感じたら誰の意思も聞かずに通報します。その結果、聡子は不快な思いをして俺を、最終的にはそれが聡子の幸せにつながると信じます。
Coach turned to me and gazed fixedly into my eyes. I feel like this is the part that Ryokishi wanted to write. I mean, all of this he really wanted to write. About the experiences of working for the CPS and then, like, witnessing tragic things like this. But this guy's like, I'm going to report it no matter what. Even if if she hates it, I'm going to help her, you know, against her wishes. It was written all over her face. He was shocked at what such a young kid had said.
どうしてあなたはそこまで。
Coach, no rather normal adults, might not have understood. So I taught him the creed and the values that I believed in.
聡子は俺の仲間だから。そして俺は聡子のニーニーだから。では理由は足りませんか？
I stared at him with a will strong and unbreakable as steel as his eyes betrayed a tiny bit of unrest.
いえ、足りないなんてことはありません。
We were silent for a little while until finally, Coach said only that.
誓ったじゃないですか、俺たち。
すみません。
聡子を絶対に泣かせないって。
We made on the vow on the day of the barbecue party. I didn't think about it hard at all, but Coach and I still made a promise that we wouldn't ever let Satoko cry. Coach gave a dry grin of regret, immediately apologizing for not remembering. One way or another, when he grinned like that, It made me think that his enthusiasm for saving Satoko was a tiny bit smaller than mine. He lightly hit the brakes, making a skidding noise, and my whole body suddenly fell forward.
ひょっとして、前原さんのお家って、あれ、ああ、前原屋敷が前原さんのお家だったんですね。
Before I knew it, we were almost at my house. Very tragic. Case file 31. So yeah, I was thinking maybe what Ryukishi wanted to write was like an answer to people saying I'm gonna try and help her no matter what, even if she doesn't want me to. So I was anticipating something else, but I guess that was what he wanted to write. That the important bit that even if she doesn't want me to, I'm gonna try and help her. See this, number 31, right? December 1st, 1981. Prefecture Juvenile Welfare Division Report. Do not view, do not duplicate. November 20. Satoko Hojo. Not even 10 years old. Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone. Consultation circumstances. Anonymous telephone SOS of child abuse. Abuse situation. Anonymous claims that a female child is suffering physical abuse by adoptive parents, her guardians. Family structure. Circle marks abusers. The adoptive father, the adoptive mother, abusers, older brother, child in question. In June 1980, the child's parents died in an accident, and she was given to her uncle on her father's side, her father's younger brother. Child Consultation Center's response. On the day of the anonymous telephone consultation, the center called the child's school and asked her situation. So this report, this might be something that Ryukishi either wrote or used to write or is familiar with of how they used to do it. The next day, the welfare officer on duty visited the child's home and heard what they had to say. Both adoptive parents agreed to the center's coaching, contacted an anti-abuse network in the city. As part of the suggested coaching, a district welfare officer in the area began visiting for coaching at fixed intervals. The scrawled note below is stapled to the report. Related information from former official Mr. W. Referred to 1977 document D.Ch.03 number 44. Ask Chief Investigator F from the city's education consultation offices. He is well informed about it. Okay, so well, that was dire, but I think it was near and dear to Ryukishi's heart because he keeps writing about that stuff, about CPS and neglected children. I think it's only going to get worse too.